should you keep on a business owner who you have just purchased their business or you're about to purchase their business? In this video, I'll be talking about how the two approaches that exist when it comes down to the owners who are selling their business or have just sold their business. So there's two main methodologies on that. One is that you exit them immediately. So one methodology is that you exit them immediately. As soon as the sale goes through, you basically say, "Thank you very much, sir, on your way," or "Ma'am, on your way." The second methodology is that you have a handover period and they continue to work in the business for a period of time. Now that handover period can be a few weeks to months to years. Yes. It depends on the size of the business. It depends on the role of what the owner was doing. So you want to understand, we like the handover period. And I'll tell you the reason why is that we've done a couple of acquisitions in which there was a like a complete cutoff between acquisition, that's it, the previous owner's done and they move on. And we found it to be always a more negative experience. There's always positives and negatives of everything. Now, for me as the CEO, I've always found it to be a positive experience. However, for some of my executives who maybe are not um, as emotionless or a bit, no, so for some of my executives, it's not as easy because they are not as resilient or they feel that they owe things to people. I don't feel like that about anyone. You don't owe anything to anyone. So therefore, I like the owners to stay on. And the reason why I like to do that is because the staff members just feel so much more settled for that initial period. Now, what's the sweet spot for that? The sweet spot is actually about 3 months maximum, because what happens in the 3 month period is that all of the handover work is done, 3 to 6 months, I should say. All of the handover work is done and or how it gets completed, and also you have a chance to go through a period of time in which you're still trying to understand culturally the business that you've just purchased and also some areas of operations. That's if you're keeping all of the operations the same. Of course, if they're absorbing the business into your current business, then that doesn't apply, and in fact that's a whole nother video. But this is where you're keeping the business as it's running. So 3 to 6 months is the ideal time. The reason why that is because the old owner will always feel like the old owner. Even though they've sold the business, they can't, it's very difficult for them to step away from that owner mindset. Yes, very difficult for them to step away from the owner mindset. And therefore, they may try to make decisions which don't align with your business goals. And therefore, and when I say make decisions, they will have no authority to make those decisions, but they will still try to make them. And that's why 3 to 6 months, because it minimizes those decisions. It's more about handing over. The handover period is very busy for both the seller and the buyer. More busy for the buyer, but it's busier for the buyer, but and less so for the seller. But it's still a busy period. So once the handover is done, then you exit them out of the business after 3 to 6 months. The other thing you can do is that you can keep them on as an employee or as a self-employed contractor, and that is also okay. You might want to do that if they are contributing to a lot of revenue of the business. So therefore, you might want to extend the period of stay that they have. So that's the methodology regarding keeping a business owner or not keeping a business owner after an acquisition has been completed. Now, when you're coming up to purchase the business, how do you deal with it? So, of course, you're coming up into negotiations about purchasing the business. My thing is that you almost agree to everything up until, if you're serious about purchasing the business, that is, you agree to almost everything that is not going to harm the business anyway. Why? Because you acquiring that business would end up being the most important thing. As long as you've got a team of people who work around the owner, then you acquiring the business is going to be of good benefit to you. You're going to end up with a cash flowing asset, which is going to come under your control, in which you can benefit over the long term. So you just agree, okay, that's fine. You've got terms that you want to do this, or the seller wants that. Then you agree to it. Unless you've had previous bad experience. Like I know for a fact that this seller has already asked for a particular type of arrangement post acquisition, which we have experience with that we don't like at all. So we refuse that outright. But we've got other solutions and other protocols in which we'll discuss with them in a bit more detail. So when it comes down to negotiations, I'll say you agree to everything about the individual. I'm not talking about the whole business. I'm talking about them themselves. You agree. Do you want to be self-employed? You can be self-employed. You want to do 2 days instead of 5 days? You can do 2 days instead of 5 days. Do you want to, whatever the consideration may be. Yeah. So they're the kind of considerations you just agree to it, as long as it doesn't have a massive impact on the business. That's the key thing. Talking about previous a no money down deal that I rejected, there were three key individuals in the business who were substantially trying to change the way they work in the business, and that is the reason why we didn't go for it. Even though they're not owners, they were very senior people. So when we're talking about how you deal with owners, you're also thinking about how you're going to deal with the senior people post acquisition. The best thing to do is always give them a promotion, even if it's a tiny thing, just like changing the job title to be more to a more senior job title. Maybe you might want to give them a pay rise. Maybe you might want to give them the vision that they can have a promotion. So all of that helps with senior team members. But of course, the most important person that you need to convince is the business owner, because they're the ones who have to sign on the dotted line. So two main methodologies: straight exit out or handover period. I prefer the handover period. 3 to 6 months is the sweet spot. If you want to find out more, of course, I've got a course that's coming out regarding how to buy businesses, integrate them, and run them post acquisition. So you can find out more about that. In